Well, it's Trevor's illness. It's back again. We need money for another treatment for him.
Why not use his college fund? It's clear that he won't need it now.
We did. After you left, we were forced to start working multiple jobs, and even with his college fund, we barely are able to make enough to pay all of our bills.
And how is that my problem? Because we're family and we really need you. Well, that's just it. You may need me, but I 100% do not need any of you. If you don't help us, we will disown you. And just like that, I turned and left. Hi there, my name is Kevin, and I may have done something a bit greedy and wrong, but the tragedy is that I don't even care. Let me explain what I mean, and then you can tell me if what I did was justified. You'll probably not agree that it was the right thing to do, but maybe you will agree that I had a good reason to do it. So my story starts back when I was a young boy. My older brother Trevor was a bit of a rotten kid. He would constantly get into fights at school and get awful grades, but our parents constantly just made excuses for him. Yeah, he stole from the grocery store, but boys will be boys. I'm sure he feels sorry for it. It didn't matter how much trouble he got into. My parents just thought that Trevor was the best kid in existence. Even when he broke our neighbor's son's arm, they just made excuses for him and brushed it off.
Listen, my Trevor is a good boy. He would never attack someone unless they provoked him. Your son must have said or done something to deserve what happened to him.
It was so infuriating. They would treat him like everything that he did was right and that there was nothing that he could do that they would be upset with. Even when he stole their car when he was only 13, they still only made him promise not to do it again. And then 1 month later, when he did only this time, he crashed the car into several of our neighbors' cars. For the first time in Trevor's life, our parents yelled at him, and they promised that he would pay for all the damage that he had done. However, the second they got him home, they apologized for their harsh words and didn't even ground him. They even lied to the neighbors and told them that he had paid for the damages even though they had eaten the bill themselves. It all changed, though, when Trevor got sick. At first, the doctors couldn't figure out what was causing his illness, but he was always tired and nauseous. It was so bad that even walking up a single flight of stairs was too much for him, and he could barely keep anything down. He began to lose a lot of weight, and he looked terrible. But suddenly, the doctors found a cure, but there was a catch. It would cost a lot of money, but my parents happily paid, and within a few months, Trevor was feeling like himself again. He even began to torment me again. Part of me was happy that he was doing better, but I really wished that he had used the experience to become a better person. Instead, it only made him feel even more untouchable. He even began stealing my things, like my iPad or my video games. Our parents always just told us to figure things out, and that I needed to just let him be. After all, he had narrowly avoided death, and that he just needed some space to figure things out. I was just so done with all their excuses. A couple years later, though, is when I really began to understand how toxic my family was, though. After seeing how much my brother had suffered, I had decided that I wanted to become a therapist. Part of me was fascinated how Trevor always managed to avoid accountability, and I wanted to help other people grow up to not be like him. At any rate, I told my parents my idea. So I have decided that I will be a therapist when I grow up. I know that it's expensive, but I'll be able to help lots of people. And I know that you've been saving money for Trevor and I to go to school, so that will help out a lot. Oh, well, you see, the thing is, we had to spend the money that we had been saving for your school on the procedure to save Trevor's life. Wait a minute, what?
Yeah, it was really expensive.
Well, I guess it was for a good reason. But when were you going to tell Trevor and I that we had no college funds? Oh, Trevor still has one. We only spent yours on his treatment. I could not believe what I was hearing. You spent mine, but not Trevor's.
Well, yeah, he has such amazing potential.
And what about me? Honestly, we just figured that you would end up working some dead-end minimum wage job, whereas Trevor is going to be somebody important one day. This is nonsense. Why can't you just split Trevor's college fund in two and we can share it? It will at least make college a lot more affordable.
Sorry, Kevin, but we can't do that to Trevor. That would be incredibly unfair to him.
Unfair to him? How is that not unfair to me? You basically stole my money, and you didn't even have the courage to tell me. I knew that it was useless to say anything else, and so I stormed off to my room and I started making plans for how I was going to still afford school. I had the grades, but paying for it was going to be a challenge. After making a budge, I got myself 2 part-time jobs, and I started working every shift that I could. It took a while, but I saved up enough that my first 2 years of school were paid for, and I applied and was accepted. I didn't even tell my parents that I was leaving for school. I merely packed up all my belongings and put most of my things in a storage locker while I brought what I needed to school. I wasn't the least bit surprised when they didn't contact me and ask where I was, or even if I was okay, which only made me realize that they were truly awful people and that I was better off without them in my life. It took quite a few years, but I graduated, and although I worked a lot of hours, I still ended up with a good chunk of student loans. But once I started working in my field, it was all worth it. Not to mention that I was making good money, and it wouldn't take too long for me to pay off my loans. Not long after I opened my own practice, did I get a call from my parents. How they had found I couldn't say, but they wanted to know if I could come over for dinner one night. Part of me was skeptical and more than a little suspicious about the whole thing, but considering how much I had accomplished and the years that had passed, I figured that it was time to at least see if we could mend the broken relationship that had grown from when I was younger. The night that I went over, my parents greeted me at the door. They looked terrible. Their eyes were sunken and they looked like they were ready to fall asleep at any second. Once they let me inside, Trevor greeted me next. He was sitting in a wheelchair and he also looked very sickly and weak. "Hey Kevin, so we heard that you were doing really well, that you have your own practice even." "Yeah, it took a lot of effort, but yes, I am doing well."
That's wonderful. We're very proud of you.
I would be lying if that didn't feel really good to hear. I had a feeling that there was an ulterior motive for asking me over, but for a brief moment, I was just happy that my family was proud of me. It didn't take long for them to ruin it though. "So since you are doing so well, we were wondering if you could help us out." "Okay, here it comes." "What is it?"
Well, it's Trevor's illness. It's back again. We need money for another treatment for him.
"Why not use his college fund? It's clear that he won't need it now."
We did. After you left, we were forced to start working multiple jobs, and even with his college fund, we barely are able to make enough to pay all of our bills.
"And how is that my problem?" "Because we're family and we really need you." "Well, that's just it. You may need me, but I 100% do not need any of you. If you don't help us, we will disown you." And just like that, I turned and left. It was no use in staying. Nothing had changed after all. As it turned out, they had indeed been forced to work crazy hours and use Trevor's college fund to pay for another round of treatment. After he had felt well again, he went for another joyride and had stolen a car and totaled it. The legal fees and fines were massive, and our parents once again paid for everything. Then when his illness returned yet again, they had to struggle to pay for his treatment. My parents ended up selling one of their cars and much of their belongings. Now they were desperate. They had nothing left to give up to cover the expense, and so they had turned to me. However, there was no way that I was going to give them a dime. After years of being treated like a burden to them, I had finally found a place in this world for me, and they wanted to take that away and help Trevor, who constantly just proved himself to be a menace to the world. After that day, my parents kept calling me constantly to beg for the money until I blocked their numbers. I had no interest in helping them, but as it turned out, they resorted to begging the community for the money and started a GoFundMe. It raised more than enough money for the treatment, and Trevor was once again healed. With the extra money, Trevor used it to buy drugs and prostitutes, and while he was celebrating, he drove our parents' car drunk and crashed it into a police cruiser and was then arrested. He is currently in prison and is serving a 10-year term, but something tells me that his illness will return, and he will no doubt either die in prison or he might be let out because of it. Either way, I doubt that the community will come to his rescue the next time that his illness returns. And honestly, I say good riddance. So there you have it. Do you think my denying my family was greedy, but at the very least that it was justified? Was I wrong not to help them out, even with knowing that by doing so, that I'm only enabling Trevor to continue to be a horrible person? Please let me know what you think in the comment section. Jeff called me and told me that Julia had been arrested. She had tried to go to Jeff's parents' house to kidnap their son, She failed though, as she was so incredibly drunk when she showed up that she was barely able to walk when Jeff saw her. He called the police, and when they showed up, Julia jumped in her car and fled the scene and was chased by the police. Several minutes later, they caught up to her after she drove her car into a ditch and wrecked it. Hi there, my name is Horatio, and my parents were just about as mean as possible, but not nearly as mean as my sister Julia. She is my sister, and she loved to torment me growing up. For the longest time, I felt unloved and pretty much hated by my family. And to be fair, I had a lot of good reasons to think that way.
Hey Horatio, what's wrong with you? Why don't you have a girlfriend?
Well, I just haven't met anyone that I really like yet.
Are you sure it's not because you're a hideous loser? That, or maybe there isn't a woman alive that would look at you and be remotely interested.
Yeah, it kind of is a bit pathetic. You really need to maybe stop dressing like a dork or maybe lose some weight and hit the gym or something. When I was your age, I had a date almost every night of the week, but you can't even get a single one.
There were lots of moments like that, unfortunately. It wasn't them making fun of me for not having a girlfriend. Then it was for how I didn't have a lot of friends. Or for barely going out. Or for being in the chess club or in the debate club. They always found a reason to make fun of me, or sometimes it was worse than that. There were many times that they would even get abusive.
Horatio!
What, Julia?
I thought I told you to wash my clothes. I have a date tonight and I was going to wear my short black dress and it's dirty.
Well, I'm sorry, but I have to work on my science project. It's worth a large portion of my final grade.
I don't remotely care about your damn grades. I told you to do something and you didn't.
She then began to hit me until I begged her to stop. I then washed her clothes, fearing that she would beat me again if I didn't. Sadly, that wasn't the first or last time that she ever hit me. For that matter, my parents would do the same. It was where Julia had learned it from. By the time that I was 18, I was desperate to move out and get away from them. I didn't really have the money to get my own place, but I didn't care. As soon as I could, I left home and moved in with some friends of mine. It wasn't perfect, but it felt so good to finally be free from those people. My friends were selfish at times, but no matter how annoying they could be, it was still 100 times better than living with my own family. Eventually, I was able to get a much better job, and because of it, I was able to rent a place of my own. It felt so freeing to finally be able to stand on my own 2 feet and be self-reliant. Things were going really well, and then one day I got a letter from my family. I was incredibly annoyed, but curious what they wanted. As I opened the letter, I saw that it was a wedding invitation. Apparently, my sister was getting married, and I figured that she pretty much was just looking for a gift. At any rate, I was curious if I was correct or maybe if they had changed. I sure did. I had gotten in shape, and I was no longer the shy and fearful kid I used to be. And so I figured the only way to find out if they had changed was to go to the wedding. Although I really didn't think that they had, but anything could happen. And so I attended the wedding and instantly regretted it.
Oh, look who decided to show up.
Hey, Dad. Hey, Mom. Of course I showed up. I got an invitation after all. How have you been?
We couldn't be better. So I take it that you still aren't married?
No, I haven't gotten married yet.
Nothing has changed. You're still a pathetic loser. I wouldn't be surprised if you've never had a girlfriend ever in your life. I doubt you've even ever kissed a girl. Ah, well, at least you've lost some weight. You're still ugly, though.
Sadly, it was painfully obvious that my parents hadn't changed at all, and as soon as I saw Julia, I knew that she hadn't either.
Oh, you did decide to show up. What did you bring me?
Oh, honey, don't joke like that with your brother. Hi, Horatio. My name is Jeff. It's really nice to meet you.
It's really nice to meet you as well. Honestly, it was exactly what I expected. Well, almost. I hadn't expected for Jeff to be a decent guy, which made me wonder why he was marrying my sister. After all, she was a complete asshole and Jeff really seemed like a great guy. At any rate, I left the wedding later, and after that I kept in contact with Jeff. We found that we had a lot in common. Years passed and I drifted away from my parents and sister, but I still spoke with Jeff from time to time. Eventually, he told me about how Julia was pregnant and how she later gave birth to a son. Soon after that, though, even Jeff drifted away. I wasn't sure why and just assumed that life had gotten busy and that he had needed to focus all his energy on his family. I didn't take offense and just focused on my own career and life, and was doing better with each passing year when once again my family came back into my life. Julia texted me one day and asked to meet with me. Just as before, I was curious as to why she wanted to talk to me, and so I agreed to meet with her for coffee when she dropped a number of bombshells on me.
Hey, idiot. So listen, I really need your help.
Well, since you asked so nicely, how could I refuse?
Oh, stop with the sarcasm. I know that you are making really good money, and I need you to help me out and hire a really good lawyer for me.
Why would I do that? And what do you need a lawyer for?
Jeff wants a divorce, and I need to hire a really good lawyer to protect me and my son.
Okay, but why do you need my money? Can't you just borrow it from Mom and Dad?
No. Dad had a stroke, and they're spending all of their money on personal support workers for him. Honestly, they will probably be contacting you soon too to ask for money. As it turns out, you're the only one doing well. At any rate, we're family. So when can I get the money?
This is a lot to process. I'm going to need a few days at the very least to think this over.
What is there to think over? We're family. That's all that matters.
Can you at least give me a few days? This isn't something small that you are asking me for. Without waiting for her to respond, I left and went home. As soon as I got home, I called up Jeff to hear his side of the story, and he answered the phone. He told me all about how he had suspected that Julia had been cheating on him, and that he had hired a private investigator who had confirmed that not only did she have one boyfriend, but that she had 3 in total. And what was worse was that he had only stopped speaking with me because he had been scared to. As it turned out, Julia had been physically and emotionally abusing him for years, and he had only recently been able to fight back against her control of the relationship. He had taken their son and moved in with his parents to get away from her abuse and cheating. I felt so bad for him that I told him that he could count on my help. He was of course skeptical, but after I told him about how my parents and Julia used to treat me when we were younger, he began to trust me. The next day, I told Julia that I wasn't going to help her, and that I was going to help Jeff instead. She of course flipped out and threatened to kill me, but her threats didn't carry any weight with me. I was no longer afraid of her. Weeks later, Jeff called me and told me that Julia had been arrested. She had tried to go to Jeff's parents' house to kidnap their son. She failed though, as she was so incredibly drunk when she showed up that she was barely able to walk when Jeff saw her. He called the police, and when they showed up, Julia jumped in her car and fled the scene and was chased by the police. Several minutes later, they caught up to her after she drove her car into a ditch and wrecked it. After they dragged her away and charged her with driving under the influence of alcohol, along with a huge list of other charges such as fleeing a scene, burglary, attempted kidnapping, child endangerment, and with Jeff's testimony, they also added assault to the list of crimes as well. With all that ammunition, Julia was looking at being sent to prison for a few decades at the very least, which made the judge that presided over Jeff's divorce case heavily favor him. He was awarded full custody of his son and was given the house, car, and all their assets as well. If my sister hadn't been a violent screw-up, then she would have had to pay Jeff a substantial amount of money in alimony. Instead, though, she was sent to prison, and from what I hear, she isn't doing very well. She contracted several sexually transmitted diseases from all her boyfriends, and her health has declined significantly as a result. Thankfully, though, Jeff didn't catch anything from her. As for my parents' health declined significantly after my sister was thrown in prison. My father suffered another stroke and nearly died. He is now stuck in a coma, and the doctors don't think that he will ever regain consciousness. And my mother had a psychotic break and needed to be hospitalized, as she no longer speaks or even makes eye contact. Although she is awake, she is pretty much in a coma as well, and barely responds to anything and barely eats either. Jeff, however, is doing much better without Julia in his life abusing him, and I'm happy to say that we have become best friends, and even my nephew is doing much better. And as luck would have it, I met a woman that makes me feel incredibly happy. It's still very early in our relationship, but I see a bright future for us, and I can't wait to see where things go. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more stories. What? What about the rest of the family? Matilda was very clear when drafting the will. She said that none of her other relatives deserved to benefit from her death, as they had neglected her in life. Therefore, she left everything to her granddaughter, to use as she sees fit. Never! That can't happen. We deserve some of that money. We are his children, by the way. I was waiting for her to die so I could get some money and buy a house. This can't be happening. We will settle this in court. Aaron must have manipulated her or something.
This is unheard of. Surely Matilda was a bit out of her mind when she had that thing drafted. It should be nullified and the money distributed equally among all the children.
Ever since I was a child, I've always been very close to my grandmother Matilda. This wasn't so much due to a matter of personality, nor because I was the only granddaughter in the family, but rather a purely practical matter. I was the one who lived closest to her, and therefore also the one who visited her most often. My grandmother had 3 kids, my dad, my Uncle Sam, and my Aunt Jessica. My grandmother lived alone in a large house with its own garden, in a small town about 20 miles from the city. All of her children were already adults, with their own lives established, and had decided many years ago to leave behind life in the countryside to settle indefinitely in the city, where they already had their respective jobs, apartments, and where their children were enrolled in school. One could say, perhaps, that the idea of living at that distance was to be able to visit Grandma Matilda on weekends when people were less busy with their day-to-day activities, but that simply didn't happen. You see, I had lost both my parents in a tragic car accident when I was young. So Grandma basically raised me, and I had a bond with her. I can remember we had a lot in common. So even when I moved out from her house, I was often the only granddaughter to visit and check on her.
I wish the rest of your cousins and uncles would make the effort to come by more often.
They don't?
Not even on Sundays, and I know for a fact that nobody is busy on Sundays. It wouldn't be the first time I hear that one of my children has used the last day of the week to go fishing or to take the kids to the pool. I'm not even asking for them to come every week. Once a month would be enough for me.
Don't be discouraged. Next month we're having a family gathering. You'll be able to see them all there. That should have been a comfort, but it really didn't mean anything remotely similar. The family gathering I was talking about was an event we organized once a year, where all of Matilda's relatives would gather on a Saturday at her house for lunch. It was more of a charade than anything else, where we all pretended to get along well and were very close to each other for as long as the gathering lasted. These kinds of meetings never went wrong, in the sense that no one fought. However, they didn't exactly serve to bring people together either, because as soon as the clock struck 6 in the evening, everyone dispersed to their respective homes, as if the workday were already over, and they wanted nothing more to do with the matter until the following year. It was a pity how unsupportive they were of Grandma Matilda, but back then I didn't dwell on it much. Her loss was my gain after all, since I enjoyed being with her, and the fact that she didn't have visitors so often allowed me to spend more time at her house. So, I spent all my childhood and adolescence in this routine, until I became the only one who visited my grandmother weekly. And I thought it would continue to be that way, until my grandmother became seriously ill and suddenly my uncles and cousins started to visit regularly.
What's this miracle of you coming to see me?
What miracle are you talking about? We've always been here. We've just been a bit busy in the city, with our work.
Yes, of course, even on vacations. Every weekend? I hope you're not waiting for me to drop dead so you can get your hands on my inheritance, because that would be in very poor taste, considering how neglected you've left me. We would never do such a thing. It's unbelievable that you would think that, considering how much we've always helped you. And furthermore, speaking of helping, how would you feel about moving in with us? I'm sure you'd be more comfortable and better taken care of. It's not necessary. I prefer to stay in my house. I already have Erin to take care of me. She's studying nursing and is perfectly capable of taking care of me.
If my relatives were upset that Grandma refused to move in with them, they didn't let me know with words. They simply repeated the offer countless times in the following months, until my grandmother finally passed away, ensuring that she would have a better quality of life in any of their respective apartments. I felt bad for doubting their good intentions, but I couldn't help it. It seemed very strange that they spent years ignoring my grandmother, and then suddenly, when she was diagnosed with a terminal illness, they showed up like good Samaritans to take care of her, under the pretext that family is there to help each other in difficult times. In any case, my suspicions that there was foul play somewhere became evident when the will was read.
All of Matilda's possessions, including the house and the money in her bank accounts, will be left to Erin. What? What about the rest of the family? Matilda was very clear when drafting the will. She said that none of her other relatives deserved to benefit from her death, as they had neglected her in life. Therefore, she left everything to her granddaughter, to use as she sees fit.
Never! That can't happen. We deserve some of that money. We are his children, by the way. I was waiting for her to die so I could get some money and buy a house. This can't be happening. We will settle this in court. Aaron must have manipulated her or something.
This is unheard of. Surely Matilda was a bit out of her mind when she had that thing drafted. It should be nullified and the money distributed equally among all the children.
My grandmother was perfectly lucid until her last days.
This will was drafted several years before she was diagnosed with her illness. Furthermore, we are professionals here. We wouldn't have allowed a woman who wasn't in her full faculties to draft such a document.
That served to momentarily silence my relatives, seeing that their anger had nowhere to go. My grandmother was richer than they initially imagined, and now that all that money was going to me, my life was going to be even better. If they wanted to keep a portion of the inheritance, they would have to do something about it, and boy, they did. At first, they tried to kindly convince me that what was stated in the will was a mistake, that even if Grandma had written those terrible things on purpose, I was a good person, and surely wouldn't leave them without their share of those assets. Then, seeing that didn't work to make me give in, they opted for more drastic measures.
We didn't want to resort to this, but since you're forcing our hand, we'll have to take it to court. We are sure you manipulated our mother into giving you everything.
To court? What nonsense. And how do you plan to do that? It's already been established that Grandma drafted the will long before she got sick, and she was always of sound mind.
We'll see about that when it's properly analyzed by experts. And believe me, when this is over, you'll regret turning your back on your family when they needed you the most.
Although it was to be expected, right? She's always been ungrateful.
I didn't know what they meant by those insults, because in the end, I was the only one who was with my grandmother until her last moments. But if they wanted to spend the little money they had left on lawyers to try to win a lost case, that was fine by me. I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, so I had nothing to worry about. The problem arose when I realized that my relatives, in the war they had waged against me, started talking to the press and appearing on local television to speak ill of me, saying that I had always been the black sheep of the family, and that now, due to a supposed mistake in the will of a sick elderly woman, I was refusing to provide them with much-needed money for them to continue subsisting. It was ridiculous, and therefore I thought it would be appropriate to return the favor in a similar manner, instead of waiting for the verdict of the professionals. So I spoke to a friend.
What do you plan to do? I have some friends who work at the local newspaper. If you want, we can let them know so you can tell your side of the story.
No, that would sound like I need to defend myself from an attack because I could be guilty. I prefer to leave the press for last. First, I would like to try another approach. Did you know that my relatives are extremely superstitious?
And what does that have to do with this?
I was just thinking that, given their belief in horoscopes and astrology, it's very likely that if a medium tells them to do something, they'll comply without hesitation. In fact, I knew that consulting mediums and watching shows about the supernatural was a common activity for most of my family members, as they loved those things and were strong believers in the mystical. So I got to work. I convinced a friend of mine to read the cards for my uncles, without them knowing that he had any connection to me. In the end, my friend did what any tarot reader would have done when encountering a potential client. He gave them hope that everything would turn out well, that no matter how dark the clouds seemed on the horizon, luck would eventually be on their side. In other words, this fake medium convinced my relatives to invest as much as they could in lawyers to defend their case, to have no fear of overspending, because in the end, the verdict would be in their favor and they would receive much more money than they invested. Of course, it was all lies. Not only did my relatives have a lot to lose, but while they were distracted by the deception, I took the opportunity to clean my new house from Grandma, and while doing so, I found a recording of her that ended up being crucial for my case.
It's a recording from 5 years ago, long before the lady became ill. And in it, Mrs. Matilda explains her reasons for leaving her entire fortune to Aaron. That's not possible. Surely Aaron manipulated her to make that video and change the will, just as we already told the press. No, Aaron had no knowledge of the video's existence until recently. No one knew except Matilda and her notary. Additionally, along with the video, official documents have been found proving that the elderly woman was in full possession of her faculties.
No, there was no trickery involved. Grandma Matilda even went so far as to insult her own children in that recording. calling them ungrateful for not giving her more love and attention in life. So it was clear who the real villains were in that story. It wasn't even necessary to go to court because it was clear that the inheritance would all be mine. I ended up giving that final press conference, clarifying everything and finally responding to my family's threats. They, on the other hand, had spent too much on a lost case that left my aunt and uncle broke, and to make matters worse. Now the whole town was aware of the kind of people they were. Neighbors vandalized their houses or stopped speaking to them altogether, and they, unable to recover the invested money or return to the pristine reputation they had before all this happened, they were forced to move far away. And I heard my uncle in the new state mow people's lawns while my aunt took up a cleaning job. As for me, I felt at peace. I had won, and they wouldn't bother me anymore. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.
I got a call saying you didn't deliver the pizza on time. Look, I said I was in a car accident, and even the police said I wasn't at fault. I still need to get an x-ray for my shoulder. You probably weren't even looking at where you were going. I am not going to pay for any workman's comp, so you better not be injured. This is strike 1 and 2 for you. So hand over any tips you made so far. You don't get any today. That's illegal, you can't do that. Would you like to end up in the employment line? Because that's where you're heading if you keep acting like that. Hi, my name is James, but like my father, everyone calls me Jim. I have worked at a small mom-and-pop restaurant called Manny's Pizza for the past 3 years while going to college. The owner, named George, was an extremely nice and well-respected elderly man who was always looking out for me. His wife would often be at the restaurant too, always smiling and giving hugs to us employees. Her name was Sally, and she made the best cookies. Both George and Sally were two of the best bosses I had ever had. You can clock out now. I know you have an exam tomorrow. Are you sure? I just need to clean this part of the kitchen. Go, I got this. Your education is very important. Okay, I'll come in early to make up the difference. George always let me do homework during downtime. He let me keep any tips that I made, and he let us have time off for school and family, although we rarely asked for time off. And when any of us did ask, we always gave at least 2 weeks' notice. However, after George sold the pizza place, the new owner ended up being the complete opposite, and to this day, remains the worst boss I have ever worked for. Okay, Jim, we talked about this. You need to upsell toppings all the time. That last couple didn't even add any pepperoni or sausage. Next time, upsell. But the Smiths are vegetarian. I don't think they'd appreciate being offered meat. No one is a vegetarian for life. Next time, upsell them. The worst they can do is say no. If you don't start upselling to everyone more often, I'll start withholding your tips. You have to earn those, you know? And that was just the tip of the iceberg of how different Steve was from George. Steve had a short temper and was always one step away from being fuming mad at the smallest things. He drove a fancy car that looked a bit run down, and his wife was very stuck up. She would often refer to us employees as the help or servants. Neither Steve nor his wife Jessica would ever remember our names. Not that they liked each other that much either. Why did your sister come over with her bratty children?
I told you last week that they were going to be here. It's not my fault you drink every night and forget everything.
Well, I can't stomach remembering most nights at home. And don't act all high and mighty. I've seen your wine bottle collection. How long are they staying this time?
Supposed to be a week, but last time they left early because of your bullshit.
She just has thin skin, must run in the family. And I think the only thing they had in common was their love of money and disliking us workers. There were 3 of us, me, Sally, and Ben. Sally normally worked the till. She had a beautiful smile and a young son. She was going through college and would often be seen with a book open when she wasn't working hard. Ben was a middle-aged guy who was trying to get back on his feet, a hard worker.
Why do you have him at the till? Shouldn't that girl be there?
Yeah, Sally, whatever. She had to pick up her kid, some sort of emergency or some shit.
Isn't she a bit young to have a kid that old? Besides, I hope she knows she can't keep using that excuse just to get out of work.
Ha! Don't worry about that. I told her this is strike 1. After 3 strikes, she's getting canned. They would often talk about us while we were nearby as if we were invisible. They didn't care about our feelings or personal life. And I know it's a business. But still, Sally's kid had a broken arm. A week or so later, Sally got a second strike because she got caught trying to catch up on some homework. Normally, George would have allowed it, since Sally always put her books down right away when customers were in the building. We had a lot of downtime during the work week.
But sir, there's no one in here, and there hasn't been anyone for a few hours. I used to be able to do homework here in the past.
No, look, that old man didn't know what he was doing. He's not a businessman like me. You need to clean or drum up some more business. Putting your nose in a book doesn't do me any good here. This is strike 2, and I am taking your tips for today. I am here today too. It's not that busy, sir. And I really don't mind if I cover for her a little. She covers for me when I do homework too. When you do homework, this is not a school. I expect you both to be busy all the time, or do I need to reduce some hours? For that, you both don't get today's tips. Steve never let us do any homework, and we had to stand around looking busy. Everything was clean. We just never got many customers early in the day. All our tips and money came at night when people wanted an easy meal for dinner. Now and then, we'd get a few customers in the late morning, some during lunch, a few during the early afternoon, and then hordes of customers at dinner time in the evening. George believed that the little profit to be made before dinner was worth having employees come in so they could make a little extra money while improving themselves. Finally, one day, Steve stepped over the line. I got a call saying you didn't deliver the pizza on time. Look, I said I was in a car accident, and even the police said I wasn't at fault. I still need to get an x-ray for my shoulder. You probably weren't even looking at where you were going. I am not going to pay for any workman's comp, so you better not be injured. This is strike 1 and 2 for you. So hand over any tips you made so far. You don't get any today. That's illegal, you can't do that. Would you like to end up in the employment line? Because that's where you're heading if you keep acting like that. Man, I need that money. It's for my family. Boo-hoo, you need to drive better next time then. The week after that, we found out that to avoid paying for any workman's comp, medical, or time off for Ben, Steve told the police and insurance that Ben might have been on drugs, so Ben had to do a drug test, and all his paperwork and insurance got delayed. We only found out because Jessica told Steve to do that, while me and Sally were within earshot. Again. Finally, the last straw. Sally's son had an incident at school regarding his broken arm and had to go to the hospital again to get it rechecked. She got the call while at work, and when she told Steve, he got mad and blew up her in front of some customers. This will be strike 3 if you go. And if you do go, don't bother coming back.
He needs to get another x-ray. He might have rebroken the arm.
Why doesn't his deadbeat father take him then? I need you here today.
Because his father left us years ago.
Well, that doesn't surprise me with your attitude. Get his goddamn grandparents to take him then. They're still around, right?
They don't even live in the same state.
Your child isn't my problem. If you go, don't come back. I don't mind covering for her. I really don't mind. You stay out of this. Sarah, go and you're fired, got it? Hey, let her go see her son. We don't need your business. Get the hell out of here. Before anyone else could respond, Steve took off to his office and slammed the door. Customers were staring at the spectacle. Most averted their eyes when it was over. We got some sympathetic nods, though. Sally had to go. I didn't have any kids, but I couldn't imagine either of my parents picking their work over their children. The next day, Sally came back in at her usual time. Grab your stuff, return any of my property, and get out. You know you're fired.
I need this job. I had to go in. If you had children, you'd see how important they are.
I don't have children because they just get in the way. Let this be a lesson to show how true that is. And since you are so irresponsible, I suggest you never have any more children. Ben and I felt bad for Sally, and we were fed up with Steve's management, so we came up with a plan. Ben let me know that he had already been looking for a new job and recently found one without telling Steve. I was graduating soon and didn't really need the job anymore. In fact, when I went to a job fair, a recruiter in my field asked about my current employment. When we got to the topic of Steve and him taking our tips and his outbursts, she got serious and said that what he was doing was illegal, that we should contact the Department of Labor as soon as possible and get the statements from the other employees. I had Sally's contact information since we would cover for each other off and on, and I told her to let me know anytime Steve had withheld tips from her. She was happy that she had kept track of those dates since she was hoping to get that money back sometime.
And guess what else that slimeball did?
Oh no, what?
He offered my job back, but only if I slept with him. I mean, you.
But Sally sounded happy for some reason.
My mother told me to record more stuff months ago when he started threatening us, so I did. And I also got him saying he was going to take our tips. I recorded him on the phone, saying I could get my job back if I slept with him. A lawyer told me this would be an easy win.
And he didn't know he was being recorded?
I checked the laws. In this state, only one party has to consent to being recorded.
Ben and I quit on the same day, leaving Steve to work by himself till he hired more workers. The DOJ was contacted, and Sally got a lawyer to help with harassment charges. I drove by the restaurant about a month later and saw that it was no longer there. Looking online, I found dozens of new reviews, all of them negative. Most were from the day Steve yelled at Sally, prompting several customers to say they were boycotting the restaurant. Sally, Ben, and I all left reviews there, and on Glassdoor indicating how terrible of a boss Steve was. Sally later told me she reported Steve to the police. Steve ended up being arrested and locked up, and that she heard Jessica was divorcing him shortly after. She said no one went to the restaurant anymore. Curiosity got the best of her, and she checked it out a few times, and it was always empty. In the end, Sally got a settlement from him, and I haven't heard anything else and have no desire to find out at his point in my life, as I am happier now than I ever was, and I don't want to ruin it. And in the end, I hope Steve learned about karma, and that what goes around comes around. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. Our mother spent all of her time on Veronica and was at her beck and call. Sometimes she wouldn't even get the chance to cry before our mother was there, doting on her every need. Veronica grew up into a healthy young girl, but our mother didn't stop doting on her. My other siblings and I were always in the background. While our mother raised Veronica, I basically raised the other two. The rest of my siblings and I didn't want much, but Veronica demanded everything.
I need a new phone. This isn't the right brand.
I will get you a new one, darling Kelsey.
My other siblings and I were given used or passed down things, but she needed brand new. My mom always gave in to her demands. Hi, my name is Kelsey, and I'm 24 with 3 siblings. Life was good when it was just me and my mom, but she wanted more children, and after my youngest sister Veronica was born, everything changed. When Veronica was born, she was a very sick baby. Doctor after doctor came to see her, but they couldn't figure out what was wrong. Our mother kept trying. She refused to give up on Veronica, and eventually she found the doctor who was able to cure Veronica. After that, our family dynamic changed, after our dad died in a car accident. Our mother spent all of her time on Veronica and was at her beck and call. Sometimes she wouldn't even get the chance to cry before our mother was there, doting on her every need. Veronica grew up into a healthy young girl, but our mother didn't stop doting on her. My other siblings and I were always in the background. While our mother raised Veronica, I basically raised the other two. The rest of my siblings and I didn't want much, but Veronica demanded everything.
I need a new phone. This isn't the right brand.
I will get you a new one, darling Kelsey.
My other siblings and I were given used or passed down things, but she needed brand new. My mom always gave in to her demands. I need shoes for school.
Too bad. I need my nails done.
Can't you use the ones you have?
They have holes in them, and the weather app says it's going to rain this week.
Just tape them up. It's picture day tomorrow, and I want my nails done.
You would think shoes would take priority, but our mom took Veronica out anyway, and she came home that same day with a new manicure. Even when it came to medical needs, Veronica always got the best care. One time, my brother broke his leg when he was 10 and I was 18. I had to drive him to the hospital because our mother was at Veronica's ballet rehearsal, where she skinned her knee and was rushed to the doctor right away. My mom got mad because I was with my brother, and she demanded I visit Veronica to show my support.
Where were you? I need to go find the nurse. None of the beds are made and Veronica needs to lay down on one of them.
She just skinned her knee. Why does she need a bed?
Because my knee hurts. I can't play Ophelia if my knee scars. What if people can see it through the leggings? Kelsey's just jealous because I am talented.
At least one of my daughters is going to be a star. No, Of course, darling, Kelsey wouldn't want to take that away from you by being unsupportive again. Would you, Kelsey?
Kelsey's just jealous. She's a talentless hack. You'll be watching me be the amazing one our whole lives. You may as well get the practice in now.
Fine, I can watch her. I knew our mom wouldn't budge when it came to her favorite daughter, so I gave in. Then she left us alone in the room to go bother the nurses. Despite my promise, I didn't pay much attention to Veronica while our mother was gone because I was more worried about our brother. She didn't complain about her need to me, and I was fine with that until I realized she was being really quiet. Too quiet. I finally looked over at her and caught her shoving some of the free lollipops into her pockets. The jar said to only take one, but she had emptied it completely. I scolded her, not that it would do much, but I didn't really think about it. When our mother came back, Veronica cried about me yelling at her, and I got in trouble, but I was used to it by then. So, when things started going missing over the years, I always had the lollipop incident in the back of my head. If anyone left money out, or any clothes, makeup, or jewelry, it would disappear. When both of my brothers went to a baseball game for a school trip, they came home excited about a signed fly ball they caught. It was their prized possession for 3 days before it went missing. I didn't have any proof it was Veronica, but her things never went missing. My other siblings and I were getting fed up. We all knew it was Veronica, but it didn't matter how many times we told our mother or who told her. So, I came up with the perfect revenge that would finally break the spell Veronica had over our mother. My brothers wanted to help. I need both of you to find that family heirloom, the necklace from Mom's grandma. I think she keeps it hidden in her room. I've been saving up money to buy a camera, and I finally have one. We're going to catch Veronica this time. They both nodded, and we got to work setting up our trap for Veronica. My siblings managed to find our grandma's precious necklace, while our mother was out shopping for Veronica's favorite snacks. I set up the camera in a hidden spot, while my brothers put the necklace on the kitchen table, where Veronica would easily find it. Then I texted Veronica to tell her our mother had brought home her snacks. Once the plan was in motion, my siblings and I hid and waited to see what she would do.
I just got the new Gucci handbag. Have you seen pics of it on my socials? I paid for it with the money I got for trading that stupid baseball. I have some left over. Let's go to the mall tomorrow and buy the new Samsung S24. The S23 is crap and so yesterday.
Then Veronica saw the necklace on the table.
Wow, you won't believe what I'm looking at. This has to be worth a fortune.
Veronica took the bait and right on camera too. We waited until she left. Then my brothers and I high-fived each other before grabbing the camera. The footage was in the perfect angle and showed not only Veronica stealing our mother's family heirloom, but also caught Veronica's conversation admitting to stealing from our siblings. Our mother came home 20 minutes later, and we sat her down as soon as she got in the door. I showed her the footage on the camera, which proved Veronica was stealing from everyone this whole time. Our mother didn't believe it at first, even with the proof, but she quickly went to look for her necklace and saw it was missing. She went to Veronica's room and searched it, finding the family heirloom under her pillow. Then our mother began to search the whole room despite Veronica's crying, finding some of the missing clothes and makeup.
Veronica, how could you do this? You know how important this necklace is to me and you wanted to sell it? You need to return everything right now and you have to apologize to your siblings.
That's not fair. I can't get it all back. I sold most of it already.
Well, you can sell your own clothes then and pay everyone back for the things you stole. Also, you're grounded, so this better never happen again.
But of course, that wasn't the end of things. Since she had been caught stealing from us and had many of her more precious belongings sold to pay for the things she had taken from us, she desperately sought out a way to reclaim what she felt that she deserved. But that meant getting her hands on something valuable that she could sell, and she knew that she couldn't steal from us, as that would only land her in deeper hot water. And so, she decided to ignore the fact that she was grounded and go next door to our neighbor's house, and while they were away at work, see if they had anything that was worth taking. Unfortunately for her though, seconds after she snuck into their house, she discovered that they had recently bought a guard dog. Once she was in the house, she was trapped with the animal who was only defending their home. The dog saw her as a threat and lunged at her and tore into her leg viciously. By the time the owners came home, they found Veronica outside their back door with a lot of deep wounds on her leg. She had tried to limp away but wasn't able to get far. The police showed up and found that the back door had been broken into, and once they determined that Veronica had broken in, they charged her with breaking and entering. As soon as our mother found out that Veronica broke into our neighbor's house, she grew furious. I had never known her to get that upset, especially with Veronica. But she yelled at her for hours in the hospital. The doctors told her that although she would heal, that she would forever walk with a limp and would have dozens of permanent scars from all the dog bites. Finally, our mother saw Veronica for who she really was, and she was incredibly depressed by what her actions had created. I think for the first time, she realized that her actions had directly created the environment that had created Veronica to be the person that she was. And while I felt sympathy for our mother, I also finally felt vindicated that she at least realized her mistakes. After that, she did start being far more strict with Veronica and started being far more attentive to the rest of us. If nothing else, it really helped to open our mother's eyes, and things finally felt a bit more fair around the house. Sometimes I pity Veronica, but then it serves her right for stealing. What do you think?